Okay, the care and feeding. It's really nice to, and I'm going to break this down into a couple of categories here. First of all, you have where my data is, there's an application there, and I have no idea, we didn't install anything specific for that application, it just has the database in there. So you've got a database there, but you've got limited access to actually care and feed with it and for it and on and all that kind of stuff. And then you've got no, we bought a server, a database server, SQL, Oracle, whatever. And then on the top there, we really spent some money buying the fancy schmancy stuff, okay? Each one of those, as you'd expect, because there's no cost for the intro, it's with the application. There's some cost for the middle guy, and then there's a lot of cost for the top guy. So it makes sense that the ability to work and maintain and do the care and feeding of your data changes with those. But here's some stuff that can happen to your data just simply through day-to-day use. Okay? Corruption. All right? Corruption is essentially where the data actually gets marred. There's actually damage to it, so on and so forth. How can that happen? That can happen because software failure, it can happen because of hardware issues, it can happen because nobody's actually watching it.
It can. Has anyone ever lost a hard disk on your laptop or your desktop? Data corruption happens all the time. Actually, it had been happening a long time before that. The disk drives are actually programmed to conceal that from us. And they can build up a list of bad sectors up until a certain ratio, and then your drive decides to go away on you. Updates to your software can corrupt your data. Letting the wrong person at your data can corrupt your data. Being distracted while you're keying your data can corrupt your data. There's endless ways to do it. And the point is not to be fearful about it. Just be aware that it's out there. There's very simple things we could do to ensure the integrity of our data.
Yeah, the next is fragmentation. And fragmentation, it used to be this really huge thing on your computer, your hard drives and all that kind of thing. And then with the much larger hard drives, it hasn't been quite as big of a deal. But for databases, it actually can be. The best example of fragmentation is essentially, first of all, keep in mind, Microsoft really wants what you're trying to do here and now to be as fast as possible. We really don't care what you try to do tomorrow. It's the here and now that we're concerned about. So what it'll do, and we've all done this, the example I always use is libraries, all right? If you think about it, if you went into a library and there was no way to find a book, you'd have to look through every bookshelf until you found the book you were looking for. Very, very inefficient. Now I'm going to show my age. Or you could go to a card catalog.
They still have them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We call them computers today. But you go to the card catalog, and the card catalog has very nice, neat order. I have a card catalog here for the author. I have a card catalog here on the title, on the topic, on the whatever. Each one of those are indexes. And what ends up happening is I can look here, and then it'll just give me the location, so I can go specifically to that bookcase, to that bookshelf. Much more efficient, much more effective way to go find this stuff. Okay, well now, when all I had to do was worry about the bookcases, if we bought a new book, all I had to do was go over to the bookcase and stick it in the shelf, and I was done. Now, I got to pay attention to where I put it, and then I got to go update these little card catalog things. So now updating and maintaining the data becomes a little more detailed. I have to work harder at it. And what ends up happening is, okay, I just filled up this part of the card catalog. Okay, well I'm going to take some of the card catalog, put it in a new drawer over there, and oh, we filled up that bookcase. Okay, I'm going to put the extra books over there. So now it's not quite as neat and clear. It's fragmented. The same thing happens with computers and with databases. They essentially get what you see is very sorted, very in order, but in truth, underneath on the hard drive, it's all over the place. The more that happens, the less efficient we are in terms of adding data and retrieving data. And that is an ongoing thing that happens on the disk level and it happens on the data level. There are utilities, countless utilities, that will defragment both your data and your disk. Catchy thing on those is they actually have to be used.
A very easy example of fragmentation I like to show people is just look at us right here. We have fragmentation in our seating. We have an empty spot. If someone came in and wanted to set up a third table over there, that would be further fragmentation. Because what it would mean is if someone's coming along here to see everyone or get their names, it's really not as efficient as it could be. We're defragmenting and we pick up someone from over there, put them here and have them in all nice and tight. If you have Windows 7, it automatically is set to defrag your disk for you on a regular basis. So as Bob's saying, it's not as critical these days, but only because it's being done for us without our knowledge.
Yeah, and as you get to devices that have more and more data, so they're more and more full, it becomes a bigger issue. So if you have a system that does not have a lot of free space, you got to defrag. And your databases, the more you change the data, the more you want to make sure that there's defragmentation going on.
Right.
Doug and I have debated this a lot. Overall, we've decided we are in favor of backups. The discussion got a little contentious at times, but I won them over. We're in favor of backups now.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
With the following stipulation.
You gotta know they actually back stuff up. I mean, I could walk up and tell you, here is my magic bag. This will back up all of your data. Just wave it over the computer, and this will now have your data. And we will do this for a very small fee. And it'll be a very effective backup system. It's not so good on retrieval, but it's a great backup system. We have had, I think, three that I can think of, 3 or 4 situations where we've talked to, they weren't clients at the time, or they were clients but we weren't responsible for their backup, where they thought they were getting good backups and they weren't. Okay? So we had one client who, you know, we don't try to force people to stay with us. We had a client who left us about a year ago. I love telling this story because they had so much trouble. They went for a lower cost alternative, and one of their responsibilities was to monitor the backups. They called us in December of last year because their server had failed. The RAID controller had completely failed, and it turns out that no one had been monitoring the backups for 2 months. So we had a situation where to restore the computer would have taken us about 15-20 minutes. But instead, that computer, that server, was the only thing that had the data for 2 months of their work. So instead, they had to spend about 15 grand, all right? And their company was down for about 4 days because they couldn't afford to take a chance. They had to make sure the data was back. And the 15 grand was not to us. There's third-party people who will do this in a much more efficient, in a non-destructive way. And to them it was a bargain because it was that or go out of business. It should come as no surprise they're now our client again. You know, but, and mostly fun aside, you got to test the backups. Somebody's got to test the bloody backups. If they don't, then you don't really have backups.
And just to clarify, and I'm assuming, but I'm pretty sure I'm onto this, Bob's example, a backup solution rarely costs $15,000. I'm pretty sure you're talking about sending the actual disk drive.
It's the recovering, it's the not
party.
having a backup solution that costs them 15 grand.
Actually, I have a client in town, the flood. Does anyone remember the flood from years ago?
No.
All of his systems were underwater when he called me. And I'd never been through that before, and we had backups all over the place, all underwater. But for a very large fee, somewhere in the range of $4,000 to $7,000, you can actually take a disk drive that's been underwater, send it to someone in Michigan, where they will pull the platters out of it in the clean room, they say, and then send you back a disk drive. So there's that final last chance we have to recover our data without a backup. but it was harrowing and super expensive and no guarantee. Much better to test your backups up front.
Yeah.
And keep them offsite.
Just on a home computer basis, I have about 35 gig of information on my computer, part of which is historical data, and I went blue screen. Why? I have no idea. Because it was on an external drive, which was my backup. It went to a restoration company because the people that serviced my computer couldn't do anything.
Right.
They couldn't find anything. So I sent the disk out. Cost me $1,500, but they restored 95% of what I had on there,
That's nice.
which was all my critical files.
Oh, luckily.
Yes.
Yeah, the challenge you have here, and I'm going to speak more on the business, if you've got a company that you are comfortable with as far as them providing the services, have a discussion where you talk about what if this happens? What if this happens? Well, if this happens, here's your vulnerability. There is no such thing as a foolproof backup, okay? All the asteroid has to do is pass near the Earth, and we're in trouble. But what happens if it's this type of outage? What happens if it's this type of outage? And then as a business owner, there comes a point where you'll go, well, we'll accept that risk. And there has to be. It doesn't matter what you do. There has to be an acceptance of risk. But have that discussion, and then, again, test the bloody. And as we point out, you have local, offsite, and cloud-based. Local would be where you're only backing up and everything is right there locally.
The flood.
The flood. Offsite is where you take a device that has your backups and you take them and remove them offsite. And then cloud-based, which is becoming more and more affordable. All right, every month the price is going down. Where you would have, usually it's a local backup plus it's up in the cloud at a third-party site. So.
Who's still using tapes for their backup?
Yeah.
We need to talk about ShadowProtect sometime.
Yeah.
It will do you a great favor to know about it. There's inherent limitations on tape, and almost no one deploys them anymore, and I'm not being critical, but I just went through this with the client too. Shocked to find out that the tape could not restore his server. The tape could restore his data, but not his server. And that's just an important thing to know. Not only having your backup, but what do I do with it once I have it? So what you'll find out is disk-based backup is very popular these days in imaging. So when Bob was talking about a 20-minute recovery interval, that's very much possible. ShadowProtect is just one of the leading products that does that.
Yeah, that's us. So. Okay.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about this, if we could.
Go for it.
Okay, so we look at these terms, and I'm trying to picture myself on your side, because this is really what drew me into databases. The first time I saw it, I had no idea.
You're actually making John, you made John go back up to the camera.
Oh, John, I was actually trying to get out of the camera. Okay, these words, corruption, fragmentation, and backups. Well, you know, half of this could be politics or things like that, but actually it applies to all of us every day. Think about though where our critical data is. Most of us probably don't have a database that holds everything. If we do, the salesman called it a CRM or an ERP, customer relationship management. The idea there is everything related to a customer will be in one place and you'll get it seamlessly after $500,000. More than likely, our data is spread out across the Microsoft Office applications. For example, who has their customer list in more than one place? Almost all of us do. These customers are over here, those ones are there. How many have every customer or critical person as an Outlook contact? I don't. But they still come up when I type an email, so I know they're in there and I can find them. Think about our data in Excel. Well, that's out there in email attachments. It's on my USB drive. It's on my external USB drive. All these things here have to be applied to all the places that we have a critical data. And our critical data is actually spread out. And that's why it's such a panic attack when the thought of actually losing your data, because how many of us would even know where to look for it? That's a lot of the work that I do for companies these days. Now that the economy is loosened just a little bit, is a lot of them have neglected their data, and they want to get back to managing their data. And one thing we're doing is we're running around and we're gathering it all up, getting it somewhere safe, making sure it's backed up, making sure we can test it, having it local for sure, even if it's in the cloud, but having it offsite as well. So it's important. It's not just like you have one thing that you need to back up. Again, the advantage of these imaging products like ShadowProtect, Acronis, etc., they will grab everything on your drives. So they are capable of grabbing it all. However, you extracting it back out might take a little bit of finagling. Don't be intimidated by it though. I mean, this is stuff that needs done. And honestly, you just need a little guidance about how to like recover email out of a backup. It's not that bad.
Yeah, and the nice thing is from a cost standpoint, again, on the backup side, the cost is identical usually to tape-based solutions.
Yes.
And you got a lot more flexibility. Yeah.